In this lesson, we'll be working with error handling in Dart. We'll explore some of the common error in Dart and how we can handle those errors, alright? So one of the most common error in software development is the syntax error. Say for instance, I create a void function and without the parenthesis, if I open this curly braces, then I'll have a syntax error. And this is because there must be parenthesis before the curly braces in Dart for creating a function, right? And as we are not following the rule of Dart, we are getting this syntax error. And if there is a syntax error in our code, VS Code will identify that error and show you the error, so you can easily fix it. So handling the syntax error should not be an issue for us, so let's leave syntax error for now and let's move to another error type. So another basic type of error is a type error. And this type error occurs when there is a mismatch in the type. Say for instance, if I created an integer and then if I try to assign an string to it, then I'll be getting this type error. And this type error is also identified by Dart and VS Code, so this should not be an issue either. So this brings us to one of the complex error in Dart and Flutter, and it is called a runtime error. This is a complex error that cannot be caught while in the process of development, but it crashes our app while in use. So now let me trigger a runtime error in our app. So instead of this .com, let me change it to something else. So now this URL is invalid. Although this URL is invalid, neither VS Code nor Dart is throwing any error. We are not getting any error in our code, right? And this is because this do.get expects a string and we have provided the string. So this does not trigger any type error or an syntax error, right? But if I now click at this get data, then you can see that in my debug console our app has crashed. And our app has crashed in the runtime, meaning that when we are using the app, show the name runtime error. So what's happening here is that DO is trying to get data from this URL, which is an invalid URL of course. And because this is an invalid URL, DO is throwing an error saying that this URL does not exist or I cannot get the data from the internet using this URL, right? And it is throwing an exception and we are not handling this exception well. So our app is crashing. Even if I change this URL to correct URL, and if there is no internet connection or slow internet connection, or if there is something wrong with the server, then our app will crash. Even if the app in itself does not crashes, we will not get the desired output, right? So this runtime error is one of the complex error in Dart that needs to be addressed. And this error cannot be caught in the development process as well. So how can we fix this issue? How can we handle runtime errors? And the answer to that question is by using the try catch statement. So let me show you how. So first we start with this try statement and then the curly braces. And inside of this curly braces, we will be placing the code that might throw an error in the runtime. So we will be placing this code inside of this try block. And if there is an error inside of this try block, then this error will be caught by this catch block. And this catch block will have the parenthesis and E, which means the exception. Alright. And inside of this curly braces, we can gracefully handle the error. We can simply print a statement that says invalid URL, right? So let's save this and let me change this to an invalid URL. And now if I click at this button, then you can see there is a graceful error and our app has not crashed, alright? So by using try catch statement, we can handle runtime error in our Flutter app, alright? We place the code that we have a doubt on inside of this try statement. And if there is an error, this catch statement will catch the error and we can gracefully handle that error. And you can also print this exception to get the exact error in our debug console. So now if I click at this get data button, then I can see that no address associated with the host name. This error has been handled gracefully. Our app has not crashed, but we are still able to see the error. Alright. And as we are able to catch the error from this catch block, we can also provide feedback to the user. For instance, if this request fails, I can show a alert dialog to a user. So show dialog, and the first argument is the context. Second argument will have this anonymous function with the callback value context. And inside of it, we will be returning a widget. So return a alert dialog. Let's end it within semicolon. And inside of this alert dialog, we have a title tag, a title argument with the text widget, and we can provide any error message over here. So now if I click at get data and this URL is invalid, so I'll be getting this alert dialog, alright? And if I change this URL to make it correct, then this will run as usual without throwing any exception, alright? So by using this try and catch statement, we can not only handle the error from an API, but we can handle any type of runtime errors. So if you have any doubt in a code and you might think that this code might crash in the runtime, you can wrap that within try and catch block and then handle it in a graceful way. So that's it for this lesson, and in the next lesson we will be working on displaying this data that we got from the API in our Flutter app. So I'll see you at the next lesson. In this lesson we will be using API data and making it a part of our app. So let's remove these comments. So let's get started by creating a dynamic list data. So list dynamic bucket list data, and it will be an empty list for now. And now for displaying this bucket list data, we need a list view builder. So let's go ahead and create one. So this text widget is actually this text. So this is an elevated button. Let's wrap it with a column so that at first there is an elevated button and below it is a list view. So wrap it with a column. Alright. And then the first child is elevated button. Alright. And the second child will be the list view builder. So this item builder is responsible for building a single item in the list. So this will be an anonymous function with two required argument, build context, which is a context, and then the index, which is an integer. So int index, and it will be an anonymous function, and it will return a widget from inside of it. And let's keep it a list style widget. All right. And inside of this list style, let's keep a text widget as a title. So title equals to text widget with a dummy text hey inside of it. Alright, so now if I save this code, my app will probably crash, and here it is, my app has crashed, and this is a runtime error, but this has occurred due to a layout issue in our app. And the reason is that this list view builder will try to occupy height as much as possible. But as this list view builder is wrapped within column widget, and column can only provide certain height for the child component, and this list view is trying to occupy all the height of the screen, there is a layout issue in our app. So for fixing this issue, we need to provide a restriction to our list view builder by wrapping it with an expanded widget. We learned that in an expanded widget lesson before, right? So let's wrap it with an expanded widget. And since we have fixed the layout issue, we can see the UI components over here. And we have this unlimited list style over here because we have not provided a restriction by item count in this list view builder. So let's use this item count, and the item count value will be the length of this list. Alright, so list name dot length. And currently there is no data in our bucket list, so the item count is 0. So there is no data displayed in our list view builder. Alright, so now we will be passing this response data into our bucket list data. So bucket list data equals to response.data. Alright, and then we need to notify state about it. So let's use this set state over here. So set state, and then save our code. And now if I click at this get data, I get this two list style over here, and this is showing here because it is hard coded here. But the good thing is we are getting the data from response.data, and our list is holding that data. Alright. So now let's move into Postman to examine the response. So in the response we have this list over here, and inside of this list we have this map objects, and each map object has this key inside of it, and we can use this key for displaying the data in our list style. Alright. So we have this item key over here. So let's move into VS Code again. And then instead of printing hey over here, let's change this to bucket list data, and we'll be getting the index. This will get a single data from the list, and then we'll be getting the key from a map object. Alright, so item key. So if I save this, you can see the data being displayed from our API. Alright, so let me show you an issue that we often encounter while working with API. So currently we are displaying the value in the item key, right? So if I change this to items, which does not exist in our object, and this is because Dart could not find the value of this items key. So we need to provide a fallback for this value. So now if I save the changes, if it cannot find the value in this items key, then it will fall back to an empty string. Alright. So one thing to keep in mind while working with an API is that you cannot trust the response data. You should always be aware that some data might be null. So it is best practice to always provide the fallback value. So now let me change this items to item so that we can get the result from the API. And in our API response, we also have the image URL. So let's use image in front of this list style. Alright. So for that, we need to use this leading argument in list style. So leading. And this expects a widget, and we can pass the image widget over here. But instead of that, I want to use a circle avatar widget. This is a new widget, and I want to show you what this does. So instead of using image widget, I'll be placing circle avatar over here. This is an alternative to image widget that provides a circular border radius automatically. Alright. So it has many arguments, and the one that we need for now is the background image. And this background image expects the image provider. In our case, it will be a network image. Alright. And inside of this parenthesis, we will be placing the URL of an image. And image URL is in the image key of a map object. So let's copy this and paste it over here. And I have not changed the key from item to image, so I'll be getting this invalid image, but I still have this circle avatar over here. So for loading an image, let's change this item to image. And now we have this image loaded with a nice circular border. You can also change the size of the circle avatar by using this radius. This will expect an integer which will be the pixel of an image. So 20 is the default size, I guess, and if I change it to 50, the size of the circle avatar will change. You can play around with the radius for getting an optimal size. And now I want the estimated cost to be displayed in the right side. For that I will be using this trailing argument, and this expects a widget. This will be our text widget, and the estimated cost is in the cost key of an object. So let's copy this and change this to cost. Alright, now if I save this, I'll be getting an error because this cost is of integer value and you can only pass the string over here, right? So let's change this integer to string by using .toString. This toString will change any data type to a valid string. So let's save this, and here we have the cost displayed on the right side. And our list style widget are very close to each other, so let's use padding for separating them. So let's wrap this list style with a padding widget. So control dot, if you are not getting the light bulb icon, so control dot and then wrap it with the padding. So now we have this nice padding in the list style. So that's it for this lesson, and in the next lesson we will be moving this button somewhere else and then we'll improve our app further. So I'll see you at the next lesson. In this lesson we'll be working with loading state indicator, init state and few other stuffs. Alright, so the first thing that I want to do now is to get rid of this button because it is messing up our design. So let's move into this button and let's remove it. And now this column has only one child, this expanded widget, and then list view builder inside of it. So we don't need this column, so let's remove it. And we don't need this expanded because this list view builder can take up all the space now. So let's remove this as well. And now let's save the code. And now we don't have any button in our UI, but we somehow need to trigger this get data, right? So let's create a button over here with scaffold actions. So move into the app bar, and we have this actions argument, and this expects a list of widgets. So let's provide icon widget over here. So icons dot refresh. I'll be using this refresh icon, and now let's wrap it via inquiry. Which will be an anonymous function for now. Alright, and here we'll be using this get data, or I'll be calling this function. Alright, so now if I hot restart the app, then the data will be fetched automatically. Alright, so now let me show you a widget that we often use with this list view builder for refreshing the list, and this is called a refresh indicator. This will give us an ability to swipe down to refresh. So let's move into this list view builder and let's wrap it with a widget, and this widget is a refresh indicator. Alright, and this has one required argument called onRefresh, which will hold the logic of what happens when you refresh the list, and this expects a function. So let's pass an anonymous function here, but this onRefresh requires a future function. So let's change this anonymous function to a async anonymous function. Alright, so this is a future function, and we'll be calling this get data from inside of this function. So whenever there is a swipe down to refresh gesture from user, our get data will be recalled and we will fetch a new data from the API. Alright, so if I swipe down, then you can see this refresh indicator, and if I release this, you will see that this get data will be called and our new data will be fetched in our list view. So the next thing that I want to do now is to show a loading state over here when this get data is being called. So for that we will be using the concept of conditional rendering. So let's move into our class and let's create a boolean over here. So bool is loading equals to, let's set it false for now. Alright, and whenever this get data will be triggered, we will be setting this is loading to true because the data is loading now, and we need to update the state or we need to identify the state about it, so we'll be using set state as well, and we can move this over here. Alright, so when the get data is triggered, our is loading will be turned to true, or our is loading will be set to true. Alright, and when the data is finally obtained by this DO, we will be setting this is loading to false, and the set state is already here, so we do not have to again declare the set state. Alright, and when there is a error, we also want this loading state to stop, so is loading equals to false here as well, and we also need to update state about it, so set state in here as well. Alright, let's save this. And now what I need to do is to use a conditional rendering for conditionally rendering a widget. So let's copy this, and here we will be using this condition. So if is loading, so if there is loading is set to true, then we will be showing this text widget that says loading, and if not, else we will be showing this list widget or this list view builder. Alright, so now it's loading. So is loading is currently set to loading. So if I refresh this now, then you can see this loading over here, and when the data is fetched, this will change back to the list view because then this is loading is set to false. Alright, so if I refresh this loading, and then this will be list data will be available, but instead of this using this text, I'll be using this circle progress indicator. This is a inbuilt loading widget by Flutter. Alright, so let's save it, and you can see this widget over here. So if I refresh this, then you can see this circle indicator. Now we can use this circle progress indicator or a linear progress indicator. So if we use this linear progress indicator, we will be getting this linear progress. Alright, so whatever you want to use, you can use over here. So I basically prefer this circle progress indicator. So let's so now I am getting this refresh icon, I am getting this loading state in the center. Alright, so this is how you use the loading state indicator, by using the state and through the concept of conditional rendering. Alright, so that's it for this lesson, and in the next lesson we will be working with multi-screens in Flutter. So I'll see you at the next lesson. In this lesson, we'll be working with multi-screen in Flutter. So all the app that we made up to this point is only using one screen. So it's time we move forward with a multi-screen in Flutter. So let's move into this main screen dot, and I want a floating button over here. And when this button is clicked, I want to open up new screen. So for that, I need to create a floating action button in screen. Clicked, I want to open up new screen. I don't want to open bottom sheet or drawer. I want to open up a new screen. So let's create a new file for that screen. New file, and I'll be naming it as add bucket list dot, and we'll have this stateful widget inside of it. And now let's rename this my widget to add bucket list screen. So now when this floating action button is clicked, I want to open up this add bucket list screen as a new screen. And this can be achieved through routing and navigation. So for navigation and routing in Flutter, there are two options available to us. The first one is named routes and another one is the material page route. So let's have a look at named routes first. So for that, let's navigate into this main.dart, and for using named route, we need to declare routes in our material app. So let's use this argument routes, and this route is a map. So we'll be starting with this curly braces as it is a map, and this will have a key and value pair, and the key will be the string and the value will be a function, and this function will have a callback value context, and this function need to return a widget. So return, and then we can return the screen over here, so main screen. All right, and now we need to define a name for we can use this for navigating between the screen. So let's move into this main screen, and when this floating action button is clicked, I want to navigate into this add bucket list screen, and for that I can use the named route. So inside of this onPressed function, I'll be using navigator dot and then push named, and then first argument will be the context and the second argument will be the route name. So /add we used previously, we created that previously in our main screen, so we'll be using it here and end it within semicolon. So now if I click at this plus button, another screen will be popped up, and we don't have any scaffold over here, so we are seeing only this placeholder. Let's change this to any scaffold, and then let's provide a f bar for this. Before that, let's import this from material.dart. F bar equals to f bar and then a title with text add bucket list. All right, and this will automatically So that's it for this lesson, and in the next lesson we will be working on passing data from one screen to another. So I'll see you at the next lesson. In this lesson we will be working on passing data from one screen to another. So what I'm trying to achieve now is that whenever I click this list item, I want it to open up a new screen, and then I need to pass this list title into that screen so that it can become a title in our scaffold. Alright, so let's create a new file over here. But instead of creating a new file, we can duplicate this. So copy, paste, and now let's rename this to view item. And now let's change the class name to view item screen. So now let's move into main screen dot, and in the list style we'll have this on tab in an anonymous function. And when the list style item is clicked, we will be showing a new screen. So let's use navigator dot push, and the first argument is the context, and the second argument is a material page route. Alright, and this builder is a function with context as a callback value, and from inside of it we need to return a new screen. So view item screen, end with a semicolon, and import this file. So now if I click at the item in the list view, then I'll be getting this new screen. So what I need to do now is to pass this title, the title or the item of the list view, so that the title can be reflected in the scaffold action title, right? So right over here. So for that, let's move into this view item, and we can use constructor for passing this data. So we'll be creating a string, because this is a title is a string, right? So a string title, and let's remove this const required this dot title. Alright, and here we will be using dollar curly braces and then widget dot title, and this title is a required argument which needs to be passed when accessing this class. So let's move into this main screen, and let's pass this title argument, and this title equals to this title, right? So copy this and paste it over here. So now let's save the code, and you need to perform a hot restart over here. Alright, so hot restart, and now the app is working fine. So we are passing this title, and this scaffold title is getting this title as an argument. Alright, so now we have this title being displayed here. Let's bring up this image as well. To load an image, we can use either the image widget, or we can use the container which has a background of an image. And if we have an image in a container, we will have more control over the image, like border radius, height, width, and so on. Alright, so instead of using image widget, let's use this container and provide it a background image. Alright, and this is how you do it. then our image is not scaled because image is at the center and this container has a full width but image is in the center. I can prove this by providing a background color to it. So color, this is a color of a container, so colors.red. So image is at the center and this container is occupying the full width, but now we need to scale this image so it can cover everything in this container. For that you can use an argument called fit inside of this decoration image. So fit, and this will expect a box fit, so box fit and then dot cover. If you want to occupy all the space available to it, then you can use this box fit dot cover. Alright, so now if I save the code, you can see that image is occupying all the space available to it. So it is fitting as a cover. You can also explore other options available to it. So box fit dot contain. This content will bring the image to the center, and this box fit dot fill will fill the image according to the space available to it. So the image will shrink or stretch according to the space available to it. And in our case, we need this box fit dot cover, so it completely occupies the space available to it and provide a nice stretch to our image. So let's change this height to 300 and looks perfect. Alright, so everything is looking fine. So that's it for this lesson, and in the next lesson we will be working on refining this app further. So I'll see you at the next lesson.